My lighting is crazy.
Hello and welcome. I hope you are all enjoying Social Distance Book Fest. We have decided, I have two friends here, I will introduce them shortly, but we decided we were going to be talking about the Vampire Diaries because it's something we're all super excited about.
Yay.
So give me just 1 second so that I can pause our show. Those of you that are in the chat, if you could say hello, I'd love to see who's here and say hello to everyone. And also, I'm going to be asking Kat and Jashana kind of what their experience is with the Vampire Diaries, and I'd love to hear what your experience is as well. So let us know, did you read the original series? Did you read Stefan's Diaries? Did you watch the show? Did you do a combination of those things? Apparently, there's also a graphic novel. So there's a few different ways to digest the Vampire Diaries. So here I have my friend Kat from For the Love of Books and also Jashana from Jashana C. And Kat, let's start with you. What is your experience with the Vampire Diaries fandom?
So I kind of stumbled upon it back when Twilight was a craze. I wasn't the biggest fan of Twilight, and I think that's when the Vampire Diaries kind of came into the scene, and it looked to be a little bit more mature than Twilight. And I really, when I saw the previews and I saw what Damon would have looked like, I was like, okay, I can get behind it. So I did start watching it, and I really enjoyed the dynamic. I thought the whole thing with two brothers who hate each other, and then this one human girl who looks like a doppelganger. And it was really like the first season was really mysterious because you don't know why she's a doppelganger. You kind of like, you're kind of getting your foot in the water. You're finding out about their past and who Catherine was, and it was really fun. I really enjoyed the series, and I kind of knew Nina Dobrev, I don't know if that's how you say her name, but she used to be in another series that I used to watch when I was younger, which was Degrassi. And so that's how I kind of knew her, and she was a great actress then, so I kind of felt more of a connection to the show because I kind of knew some of her works before she came into the Vampire Diaries.
I actually just learned through like a random YouTube video that she was in Degrassi. I didn't watch that show. I don't really know about it. I think my son has watched it, but I was like, what? Really? She was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how about you, Jashana? What's your...
I randomly, I don't know how long ago, it was like while it was going on, I think like season 5 was going on, and I randomly just started watching it. I think because of True Blood, because I loved True Blood and all of its cheesy glory. And I think I just was like, I needed more vampire stuff. And I had heard of Vampire Diaries. So I was like, let me just check this out. The seasons that were on Netflix. And I watched the first 4 seasons at that time. And then I just like didn't catch up. I didn't have cable and whatnot, and I just like didn't keep up with it for a while. And then last year, I think it was last year. Was it last year? I don't know. I rewatched from the beginning. Yeah.
She was like sending me stories and stuff.
Yeah, I was sending all the Snapchats and stuff to Desirai, and I was posting it on my Instagram and everything, and I watched like the whole thing. So I've seen the first 4 seasons twice, and then the rest of it just the one time. And yeah, just binged it all.
So I actually have my cousin Selena in the chat, and I believe she can confirm. I believe she read the books first, like the original series. And for me, I knew the series existed. I think I had picked up the books. I probably read like maybe half of the first book or the whole first book or something. And then I was like, you know what? The Vampire Diaries show is starting. I'm going to watch it. And I fell in love with it. And there's some pretty big differences between, who Elena is as a character in the books and who she is on the show. And yeah. I felt like I loved just the character so much more on the show that I put the book down and I was like, I don't even know if I want to finish it. And like my cousin Selena was like, I don't know if I want to watch it because I read the books and it's so different. So that's kind of how I was feeling about it. I still want to eventually go through the original series. I think at this point I've read maybe the first, second, and like half of the third book or something like that. It's just, we think of Elena, she can be a little bit annoying, but she's not like super bitchy, and in the books she kind of was.
Yeah.
Like she was pretty manipulative and not quite the same girl next door kind of character. So it was very interesting that they kind of changed that about her. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about kind of rating them in order. I think it's really hard to talk about the Vampire Diaries without mentioning Twilight, without mentioning True Blood, right? Yeah. And I've always tried to get people into the Vampire Diaries, and the way I explain it is like, you know, you have these three. You have Twilight, you have Vampire Diaries, and you have True Blood. And I was like, Twilight and True Blood are on like completely opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Twilight's YA, you don't really see too much. It's not much cursing. It's just, it's for a younger audience. And then you have True Blood, which, you know, there's nudity and it's kind of raunchy sometimes. It's pretty bad. I was like, if you combine those two, that's the Vampire Diaries, like somewhere in the middle where it's not super young, but they're snarky and they're funny and they're still having sex and things are happening. And it's just, that has always been the Vampire Diaries for me. So it's always been at the top of my list. How would you kind of rate those three if you had to put them in order of how you enjoy them?
I agree with you. When we first started like this live show, you guys were talking about comparing it to True Blood, and then Twilight. Kind of thought about it. I was like, yeah, it's kind of like right down the middle. Like if you don't like violence or like nudity or sex or scene or things like that, I wouldn't recommend True Blood. Or if you think that Twilight's a little too juvenile, I think that Vampire Diaries kind of has like that middle balance, and it's pretty good at being the best of both worlds, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's a really good like explanation of what the Vampire Diaries is for people who are at least familiar with that. And yeah, I don't know how I mean, Twilight, like I didn't ever read when it was like all popular. I had seen like excerpts of it and I just was like, that seems bad. And then I was actually a manager at Hollister, and all the younger girls were like, you can't talk bad about it if you haven't read it. So I like spite read the entire Twilight.
Did you really?
Yeah, and I had seen the movies, and like I always was like, the movies are fun. Like they're fun. It's a fun story. And I read the books and I was like, yeah, I prefer the movies. So I don't like hate Twilight, like the movies. I think they're fun. When they're on TV and stuff, I'm like, I'll watch it. The acting's not great and stuff, but I don't care. And then I have such like a nostalgic love for True Blood though, that I feel like True Blood would be like right up, like probably the top for me.
The top for you. Yeah.
Yeah. But honestly, like, cause I just rewatched all of True Blood recently. And also was just like spamming everyone on my Instagram stories with probably unwanted clips of it. But I didn't care. And I feel like Vampire Diaries honestly has like, it has more heart. True Blood, I feel like, is just more ridiculous, fun. There are touching moments, but generally speaking, it's kind of like a snarky, sarcastic, ridiculous show for adults to watch. Whereas I feel like the Vampire Diaries, I cried so many times. Yeah, like watching that. Oh my, I told you guys I rewatched the series finale before this, and I was like crying and
bawling. Yeah,
I'm like, I want to rewatch it. So I feel like it just has like more heart to it.
I do connect with the story with Vampire Diaries better. I feel like they did a more emotional storyline.
Yeah.
Now, do you think
the True Blood series? So yeah, I agree.
Do you think that has anything to do with that we kind of get to watch the characters growing up, you know, as they move from high school to then going to, you know, college? So we get to see their first loves and their relationships and like kind of all this stuff that they end up going through, which it feels different than True Blood.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I think it has to do a lot with the character development and the character growth, because they do start out so young. And like at the beginning of the Vampire Diaries, you're kind of coming out at you're starting off as with Elena having just lost, her parents, very, very traumatic, and then her growing throughout the series. And you get someone like Sookie from True Blood, and I feel like I remember when I first started watching True Blood, Sookie was very she was like a firecracker, and she had all this confidence about her, and she's like the complete opposite of Elena. And I feel like I just connected with Elena a lot more, and especially because I was much younger when I first started watching The Vampire Diaries, so I feel like I connected with Elena a lot more. So I just felt more of an emotional connection with Elena in her growth and her storyline and everything that happened to her. So that might just be it. It probably has to do with the fact that she does grow. She starts off so young and grows throughout the series.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think Rachel Roy was saying that she read the Sookie Stackhouse series. I have the books. I have not read the Sookie Stackhouse series yet, but I know every time I see you rereading them or talking about them, I'm like, I have to read them. Yeah. I mean, I don't know Lafayette from the person in the show. I mean, from the books, but I know in the show he was awesome.
He was like my favorite.
The Sookie books are so vastly different from the show. They cut out entire characters. They add characters. Lafayette is only in like the first book, really. And
I've heard that.
I won't say he's not in the rest of them. I'll just say that. And he's like one of the best characters on the TV show. And they added Bill gets he has to turn a teenage girl into a vampire, Jessica, and she's not in the books at all. That never happens. Wow. It's very different. And like I said in the comments, literally nobody asked for this, but I'm going to do an in-depth review of our comparison of the show
and the series.
Yeah, it's completely irrelevant at this point. Nobody cares. This stuff ended in 2010, but I don't care. Sounds like fun.
So I think, the draw, at least for a lot of friends that I've spoken to, is the romance in the Vampire Diaries. And we tend to pick one ship over another. So before we get into all of the characters, let's just talk about Elena and Stefan and Damon. Kat, you can go first. Are you Team Damon or Team Stefan?
I was Team Damon from the very beginning. When the first scene where he comes, I think he's like, hello, brother. I was hooked. I loved Damon from the beginning. Yes, he did very bad things. He's not perfect. But as the series went on, I only grew to be more infatuated with Damon because of how much he grew. I feel like he had one of the biggest character growths in the whole series, like how he started off with so much hate. And, as you watch the series, you realize he's just like a big teddy bear on the inside. So I was always Team Damon. Not that I didn't like Stefan's. This was a series where you just look at both love interests and you're like, they're both really good and really good love interests. But there was just something about Damon that always made me gravitate towards him. He just I feel like he had more depth to his character, and maybe that's why I ended up loving him more. But yeah, I was always Team Damon from the very beginning.
How about you, Jashana?
Yeah, definitely. I never go for the love interest that's the good, wholesome. I mean, he wasn't wholesome. He's a vampire and he does bad things too. But you know what I mean? Between the two,
he was trying. He was trying to be as human as he could.
I want to be in the tortured soul that just grapples so much with being that. And that's again, True Blood. Bill, never, no, get away. I hate it. And it's the same for the same reason. I don't know. I just like especially with vampires, I feel I like the vampire love interest that's I'm a freaking vampire and it's fun and I have a good time with it. But also, like you said, deep down, really, I'm a softie.
Yeah.
And I'll go to the ends of the earth for those that I love. I just love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Damon for sure.
So I'm also Team Damon. I think from as soon as he steps on screen, despite the fact that he does these terrible things, he obviously wants revenge. He's upset at what his brother has done to him and the life that he's forced him to live. But I think you can always tell that everything he's doing is coming from a place of hurt, right? He's just so wounded and so upset by what's been done to him and how his choice was taken away, and he wasn't able to decide if he wanted to spend his life as a vampire. And I think that's why we're always hoping and always wanting to see him change, because it's like, oh, maybe one day he won't be so hurt that he has to lash out at people and do these terrible things and be so selfish. And so, like, for me, every moment that you could see him holding back with Elena because he's thinking about his brother, like, for me, those moments were just like, you know, goosebumps and like, oh my God. And it would totally give me butterflies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you think, is there like a memorable show moment for you that, like, I know I have one that I could rewatch probably till infinity, and it's just like a single scene that I could rewatch over and over again. Does anything like that jump out to you?
For me, there's a lot. There's so many. One of the biggest scenes that I loved was the dance between Elena and Damon when Stefan wasn't
at the Founders Ball.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that scene. But I feel like my favorite scene in the whole world, and I apologize if no one has watched the entire series.
Oh, hey, spoilers.
Spoilers. Spoilers. At the very end, when Damon is reunited with Stefan, and he says the same line as when he came into the show, and when I like get goosebumps when Stefan opens the door and there's Damon, and Damon's like, "Hello, brother," and it's the exact same lines as when he appeared in the show, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I was so emotional when I watched that. It was beautiful, and it's honestly my favorite, like one of my favorite scenes in the whole series.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a very good one. I think it was 2 years ago that I like did my rewatch and then watched the last however many seasons of it. But so I can't remember a lot of them vividly, except the one that just, oh my God, like broke my ever loving little soul. Freaking Enzo.
Oh,
when
Enzo,
oh my God, I was so happy for Bonnie.
Oh.
And I loved Bonnie and Enzo. Like, oh God, they were like probably my favorite couple, honestly, on the show. Like, I loved them together. And when he died, oh God, it was just so heartbreaking. Like, I was sobbing.
Yeah.
So that's probably one that's one just always sticks out to me. Yeah.
And I didn't mention this, but another one that I thought it was really sad was when Caroline comes to terms with the fact that her mother died, and she regains her emotions, and oh my God, that whole scene, it was just like, it was so sad. I was bawling when I watched that scene.
So I think for me, like the three most memorable, there's probably like a bajillion of them, I'm sure we all agree, but the ones that like immediately come to mind, there was a scene where Elena and Damon were dancing. It was some kind of like a costume Halloween party thing. And it was after Elena was a vampire. And I think it might have been like during the time they were figuring out that she was sired or something like that. And he was encouraging her to drink blood. And so they're at a party and they're dancing, and it's a costume party. So everybody's dressed up and they're just kind of like floating around, like pretty much high on the blood that they've been drinking from the people. I don't know. Do any of you remember that?
I remember,
I remember the song that's playing. I don't know the name of it. Damn it. But that scene, because just how much she let down her guard and how into they were just like being completely their vampire selves without a care in the world. And they were so happy and they were dancing. And there's just, that's a scene I really like. I know one that's super impactful that I cry every time I watch it is when they're threatening Elena to turn her humanity back on with Matt.
Yeah. I remember that scene.
It's like, no matter how many times I watch it, I always gasp every single time. And John will be like, "Desirai, you've watched this." I know, but still.
The thing is, her gasp, like when Damon snaps his neck and her gasp, like it was so genuine. Like she was so, like her acting in that scene was so good.
Yeah.
So on point. Oh my gosh, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, you felt it like in your soul.
Yeah.
And then I would say the top scene that I could watch till eternity is when Damon's in her bedroom giving her back her locket, like right before he makes her forget. He tells her he loves her.
Oh.
And and like I think there's like a single tear that comes down, and he's like, you know, it's because I love you that I can't be selfish with you.
Yeah.
So precious.
So what would you say are some of your favorite ships outside of, you know, Elena and Damon, Elena and Stefan? Jashana, you just said that Bonnie and Enzo. What did you guys think about Caroline and Stefan?
I actually liked that. I thought it made sense because I think mostly just because I didn't want Stefan to be with Elena. And like they were friends before, you know what I mean? Like Caroline was kind of like there for him and he was there for her before when they were just like buddies. Like they just always had that kind of like how Bonnie and Damon were just like friends, but like them I didn't want to be together. But yeah, I don't know. It made sense to me, I guess. So I liked it. But I guess I wouldn't say I necessarily cared that much.
I was completely against the ship, mostly because I was a huge Caroline and Klaus fan. That is like my end ship.
Yeah, that's true.
I was so in love with them. Like outside of Damon and Elena, they're like my favorite ship in the whole series. So when I saw that, well, obviously he went on to do his own show, which was, you know, good for Klaus and everything. But then they put her with Stefan, and I was like, I'm not okay with this because Klaus is endgame. Like. He was like, you know, he's waiting for her. And when the series ended, I was like, okay, Caroline is now going to go into the new show and they're going to live happily ever after with Klaus. And that never happened. I was so upset. But yeah, I mean, Stefan is so special that I don't know who in my head I would put him with, but it's definitely not Caroline because she belongs with Stefan. I mean, I'm sorry, with Klaus.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that too. I think just the way they wrote it, like at the end, I think by the end, I just was like, this just makes sense because like she had the kids with Alaric and she was being a mom. And so I feel like I just kind of like accepted that she wasn't going to go to Klaus at that point. So Stefan was like a good choice, I guess. But yeah, that would have been cool if they would have written it that way because I love Klaus.
Yeah.
I feel like Klaus is like another Damon in how I feel about him. But I would have loved to see him and Caroline together. However, Vamps Rock here says Bonnie and Jeremy and Caroline and Tyler. And I did like Caroline and Tyler with her as a vampire and him as a werewolf. I liked them together. You know, drama and things and stuff happens and it didn't quite go the way we were expecting. You know, we have Klaus to thank for that. But I think they were like pretty comfortable, and I don't know. That was like probably the only time I liked Tyler, because before that he was just the jock jerk, and then like afterwards. But when they were in their relationship, she showed so much compassion to him as he was going through his werewolf stuff, and so I really liked them together.
I you know in some ways I did like Tyler and Caroline. Obviously they would have never worked out, mostly because honestly when I was watching that season when they were together, I felt like Tyler never stood up for their relationship. And I get it, you know, you have Klaus and he's like this super powerful hybrid, and he has not total control, but he has a lot of control over Tyler. But I just felt like Tyler just took a stand for Caroline and their relationship, and I just felt like a lot of the things that did happen was because Tyler was just too afraid to stand up, and that's the reason why I ended up not shipping them together. And then honestly that was the start of the whole Caroline and Klaus thing, so my heart went towards them anyway. So but I was just not the hugest fan of them together.
I'm going to ask this mostly because of what my husband's saying in the chat, but if you were to pick one character that would be like endgame for you, who would that be?
Like for me,
Yeah. Like who could you see yourself like settling down with and just being really happy with?
I would pick Elijah. Yeah, yes, I would pick Elijah.
Peaceful.
Like, there's no thought. I feel like Elijah's very honorable and he's very loyal, and he's someone who will he will fight for you. He fights for his family. Like, no matter how bad his family is, he has this whole thing of family being the most important. And I know that the actor was very handsome, so that it helps that he was very handsome. But personally, if I was writing our own story, or my own vampire story, I would put myself with Elijah.
How about you, Jashana?
I feel like I would have to go with Enzo. I just love
the accent.
Yeah, and once he got with Bonnie, because he was a dick before and hated him, and he was so annoying and just always messing stuff up and being difficult for everybody. But then he got with Bonnie, and he was so sweet. And then even in the end, when he was just a spirit hanging out or whatever, he just was so sweet and wouldn't let her give up and die. And no, love, it's not your time. And I think also the fact that he just calls her love, I thoroughly enjoy that.
I really go ahead, sorry.
I guess. So yeah, I like him.
I loved his chemistry with Damon, as friends, the way they used to give each other shit. I thought that was super cool. Hold on, I think we have a question here. Vamp Rock wants to know, did you watch the originals?
I started it. Yeah. I haven't continued it.
Same for me. My friend Diana is in the chat, and she keeps poking me because she's like, Desirai, finish the originals so I can talk to you about it. But I don't know how many seasons they got to. I don't know if it was 3 or 4, but I think I watched the first 2, and I was loving it. I thought they were doing a great job with the originals. And the originals had so much of their own personality. Obviously, they were able to make a spin-off out of it, but I loved the characters over there too. Yeah, she's like, poke, poke. Yeah, I definitely have to finish the originals.
Yeah, I think I tried watching it too soon after finishing Vampire Diaries. And so I think I was just missing, I was like, where's Damon? Where's Bonnie? I just was missing those characters. So I feel like it'd probably be better now if I went and watched it. And then there's the other one, right? Legacies.
Yeah.
I have
the younger, isn't it?
Not
it's
his
daughter or something, right?
They're kids. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I watched the originals when it released for the most part. So I was kind of watching them, and it was really pretty cool to watch whenever the shows crossed over, because I would watch one then the next. And then at some point, I don't know, I think something major happened on the show. And after the season finale, I was like, I don't know if I could recover from that. And then I just didn't go back to it. So I definitely have to go back to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if either of you are aware, but in Georgia, you can actually go on a Vampire Diaries tour. You can actually also go on an originals tour. And so the Vampire Diaries, while they did do the pilot in Vancouver or something like that, they filmed a lot of it in Covington, Georgia. So me and my friend Diana and my husband have gone quite a few times, I think. John, how many times have we gone at this point? Or Diana, maybe Diana will know. We were making it almost a yearly trip, but you can go over there and you can see the square, the Mystic Square, wherever they have their little meetups and their chat, and you can see the Mystic Grill in the background. Oh, cool. This is actually where I got my Mystic Grill shirt. So, and eventually it used to be just a facade that they were using, but eventually they turned it into a restaurant, so you can go in there and you can eat in the Mystic Grill and stuff like that. And then the originals was filmed in Conyers, which was about 20 minutes away from Covington, but the clock tower is also in that square. The one that you see all the time. It's right next to Mystic Grill. I'm trying to think of what other locations they showed us. They showed us Elena's house, Bonnie's grandmother's house. We got to see Lockwood Mansion, which is a real mansion that belongs to someone. Oh, cool. So we didn't get to go inside the houses because people actually live in those things, but But it was pretty cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah, so definitely worth checking out if you're a fan.
I would freak out.
It is.
I went on a Universal Studios
awesome.
tour, and when I saw Desperate Housewives, the lane, when I saw Wisteria Lane, I was like, oh my God, Wisteria Lane. So I feel like I'd freak out like a total
It's funny.
fangirl.
Yeah. It's funny because for like the originals, they make it look like they're filming in Louisiana, in like New Orleans. But it's actually just one street in Conyers that they have all set up to look like New Orleans, and they have like real shops and people that live there and shop there and everything. But when they're ready to film, they would shut it all down. And we got a chance to kind of watch them film certain episodes.
That's cool.
So I was like across the street from Klaus at one point. And we were just like waving to him. But it was pretty awesome. Now, in regards to character development, right? We were just saying that they kind of grow, and we get to watch that. Who for you had the best storyline or growth or character development? Kat.
I mean, like a lot of them, but the one
Damon's a given, like outside.
Yeah, Damon's a given. Yeah. Outside of the main like trio, I feel like Caroline had one of the best character growths. She starts off the series so young. She's very naive. All she wants to focus on is school and having just having that perfect high school career kind of thing. And then you kind of see, and then she gets turned into a vampire, and then you just kind of see her. She becomes so mature, and she deals with what's happened to her, I feel like, very maturely. And I just honestly, I just feel like she had one of the best character growths in the series because of how she was in the beginning and how the series ended with her. I mean, she ended up having kids towards the end of the series, so it was just like completely opposite ends of the spectrum with her, like who she was in the beginning, who she was at the end.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Because I think there's other characters that like I liked better, but I didn't dislike Caroline. But yeah, I feel like she definitely grows the most out of everybody. Because everybody else, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like they're kind of who they are throughout. Like they kind of already knew who they were and what they're about a little bit. And I feel like, yeah, in the beginning, she was just so naive and didn't really know who she was and what she was about. And then getting turned into a vampire, and that was a whole thing and like journey for her. And yeah, I'm trying to think of anybody that I think would have had more, but I can't. I think that's the best answer.
I think, like we said, Damon's a given, and I think Caroline is also like a great one. But I feel like Matt goes through a lot too.
Yeah, he does. Then he ends up being like a little leader man and being like a sheriff or whatever.
I feel like he's such a great friend. Almost all of his friends around him turn out to be like supernatural beings. Like you have Tyler, who ends up being a werewolf. You have Elena, who eventually turns into a vampire. Like everybody around him turns into the supernatural being, and he kind of just stays human. And I think like the fact that he was human, like that's what kept him grounded. But I feel like he was so supportive, and he never abandoned his friends in a lot of ways. Even though everything around him is changing, he's thrown into this world that he had no idea ever existed before. So I feel like Matt, yes, I agree. Matt does go through. He goes through a huge change, and he keeps his composure, and he becomes such an honorable character, and he never turns into a bad guy. He continues supporting his friends throughout everything, and despite the fact that they're all gonna outlive him because he is human.
But it's definitely something he struggles with. I think in the beginning he's very much, I'm there, I'm here, I'm helping, but then it gets to a point where he's like, yes, I'm out because you guys are just too much for me. I can't handle this. And so he kind of has to find his place, and then having to see Elena with not just Stefan, but also Damon and like whoever else Elena, ends up with temporarily or anything else.
Too.
Yeah.
Like that
was
super hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he had like a crappy home life and just everything.
He's a trooper.
Yeah.
He was abused. He was a trooper.
For sure.
So I have rewatched the show at least once. And I remember like when I started watching it again, I was just like, oh, they're in high school. They're doing this. Wait, he's a football player? She's a cheerleader? Like, because it goes away so quickly.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the show, like they start off in high school and things are happening in high school, but they do step away from like the high school scene pretty quickly throughout the show. But one thing that I really, really missed was the writing in the diaries.
Oh yeah. That was such a season 1 thing.
At the very end, and then everybody's writing in their diary, like, dear diary, this is what happened to me in my life. But it goes away forever.
Yeah, like, in the beginning, she's using it, Elena's using it as a form of therapy to kind of deal with the loss of her parents. And then Stefan's using it because he's trying to work through his feelings and what's happening in Mystic Falls and, why this girl looks like someone he knows. And I just really, really liked hearing their thoughts and kind of internal dialogue. And I wish that hadn't gone away. I wish they hadn't like pushed that away for whatever reason. I thought it was pretty cool to see those parts.
Yeah, it was a very season 1 thing. I don't notice the diary as much after that. But yeah, I remember the scene where she's like on her little nook in her room and she has the diary she's writing. Yeah.
And the other thing that they got rid of really quickly was kind of the Raven serving as Damon. Because in the original books, I guess he is kind of the Raven, like he turns into the Raven or something, but they ditched that really quickly. Because in the beginning, you see the Raven in the cemetery, you see it following her, and that was pretty much like Damon just kind of following her around. And I don't know if they felt it was like too much to deal with a bird or what, but they were just like, okay, we're letting this go.
Yeah, that's in the final episode too, very briefly. Like when
did they bring it back for like a hot second?
Mausoleum. And then the bird fly, and then he walks up, and she like looks at the bird, all like, "Oh hey," yeah. And then Damon like walks up. I had forgotten about it, so when I saw that just earlier, I was like, "The frick was that?" Because it disappears entirely. They don't really talk about it that much in the show.
So I know that like with trailers and how we kind of get invested in the show, just the romance between Elena and Damon and Stefan kinds of ends up being like a really big part of it. But for me, from beginning to end, this show was really about the brothers. It was about Damon and Stefan and everything that they went through and how, regardless of what they went through, they still loved each other as brothers and they were kind of able to find their way back from that. Would you kind of say the same thing, or did you not see that, or like?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the story, the series did start off as like a love triangle, but I feel like towards the end, like of the series, it really turned to be about how much Damon and Stefan really loved each other and how much like how their bond as brothers really grew, especially towards like the last few episodes of the last season. So I do agree. It started off one thing, but it really the show just kind of went on to showcase. Doesn't matter how bad you screw up between your with your sibling. At the end, you really love each other, and Damon and his love for Stefan and vice versa. It was such a beautiful relationship that they had towards the end, and honestly, it's one of my favorite parts about the series.
Yeah, I was thinking that too when I was watching it, because they have that whole scene where they both want to sacrifice themselves to save his balls, and he's like, "I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it." And Stefan is like, let me do this for me, not for you or for Elena, but like for me, because I need to do this to like amend for the things I did before. And when he's like telling him like, you're the big brother that I always like knew you were or whatever. And I was just like right in the feels. And like that ending scene where he shows up and is like, hey brother, or hello brother. I was just like, this is like one of my favorite like relationships in general. I feel like on a TV show that I love is their relationship as siblings. And oh yeah, Cynthia, definitely. Sorry, comment shout out to Enzo. And I also feel like honestly, I feel like the love triangle is like the what is it, tertiary, like the third kind of overall theme as far as importance for me. I feel like number one would be their sibling bond and relationship, and then just the friendships in general. Like at the end, you have Elena and Caroline and Bonnie all still there. And can I just say, like, they would all be dead 17 times without Bonnie.
Without Bonnie? Yeah.
Like, Bonnie, like, what? Like, literally, they would have, the whole town would have died multiple times.
But yeah, Bonnie, she's their lifesaver, yep.
Yeah, she came in clutch like so many times, and she was so over it all the time and just was like, oh my God. But she just kept doing it because she wanted to save her friends. And so shout out to Bonnie.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of put like Bonnie and Matt in the same category in regards to the amount that they dealt with. That really they shouldn't have had to constantly saving their friends, and they just put up with a lot of shit.
But they were, yep. Yeah, and I think that I would say the brother relationship, the friendships, and then like the little love triangle thing.
So, you know, a lot of what we get in regards to Damon and Stefan and Catherine kind of all happens in flashbacks where they give you the history of how she manipulated both of them and what she did. And it's kind of, it's so sad. Every time I've seen Damon interact with Catherine, it's always broken my heart because for the longest time, that's all he wanted was Catherine. And he thought that he could have her, that he could be with her, that like, he thought she was dead. But for her, it was never even about him. But so there is a series, and the series, it's a book series. It's actually based on the show. And I've read probably the first 4 books in it, and I absolutely love it because the first book, again, it's like Stefan writing in his diary, talking about what happens. And it goes back further than the show in regards to how they all met and how they became vampires. And so the series is called Stefan's Diaries. And I think there's about like 6 books in the series. They're not that long. They're probably around under 300 pages. But because they play off the characters in the show, I enjoyed that series so much more than the original series. And I just wanted to share that because I love recommending it if like people want to get more of the Vampire Diaries. So it's Stefan's Diaries. And, you know, it's just, they cover so much in that first book in regards to them all meeting for the first time. And I think it really, really, really drives home why Damon was so angry, like more so than the show did. So worth checking out. As far as Elena on the show and Nina Dobrev, I was always so impressed with the fact that she was playing 2 characters. Because she played them both so well. And like, you know, sometimes it was little things like, oh, she has curly hair, that's Catherine. You know, like silly things like that they used to kind of differentiate them. But Catherine was so much her own character, despite the fact that, you know, it was being played by the same person. Are there any memorable like Catherine moments to you, or maybe moments where she tricked you? You know, because they kind of tried to do that sometimes, because there was times where Elena was pretending to be Catherine and Catherine was pretending to be Elena. So they made it very, very messy. Are there any memorable Catherine moments?
I can't remember I can't remember any. I mean, she had lots, but I can't remember any right now, other than what I just watched, the finale. But
I think, honestly, yeah, it's Catherine. She has lots of memorable, but one that always sticks with me, it's maybe not as memorable for other people, is when she finally, like, she gets rid of the bitchiness and she really becomes like really raw and really honest with Damon. And it's a moment that I'll never forget, because I feel like that's the moment when Damon when she truly, truly breaks his heart, and she tells him it was always Stefan. And I will never forget when she told him that. And it was just
so heartbreaking.
It was so heartbreaking because she wasn't being a bitch. She wasn't trying to be mean. She was just finally telling him the truth after like this guy chased her for over 100 years or however long, and he was in love with her this entire time. He was trying to get her back this entire time, and for her to finally just like be honest with not trying to be mean, and I was like, I'll never forget that scene, because I don't think Damon ever truly felt that she didn't love him, you know. I feel like in some ways Damon always felt that in some part of her, even though she might love Stefan more, in a little bit, in her, even the tiniest bit, she loved him as well. But when she said it was always Stefan, it kind of like just shattered his entire life. Like it shattered all his hope.
Everything.
Yeah, it shattered all his hope that he ever had about getting her back.
Yeah, I think he would have kept trying.
Yeah.
Forever if she hadn't just been like, listen. Nah,
do you think it's weird, you know, how he was totally Catherine, and then like all of a sudden it's Elena? Do you think he was transferring his emotions? Do you think he still legitimately fell in love with Elena for who she is?
I think in the beginning he might have been projecting his feelings that he had for Catherine onto Elena, but honestly, Elena and Catherine are so different. Catherine's more confident, and not in like a nice kind of. She's very determined. She thinks she puts herself at number one. I mean, her entire life.
She's manipulative.
I mean, the reason why she survived was because she always put herself at number one. She's very manipulative. She's very confident. She knows how to charm her way into people's lives and into their hearts. And Elena's very different. Elena's more caring, compassionate. And so I do feel like in the beginning, yes, Damon might have projected some of his feelings that he had for Catherine onto Elena, and also it kind of helps that the fact that they're doppelgangers and they look exactly alike. But I think as the show went on, and I think Damon really started to notice that they're very different, and I think Nina's yes, I agree. Night Fair. She said, I think Elena was who I agree 100% with that statement. Yes.
Yeah, I think he was like in love with the potential of Catherine.
Yeah.
More than her.
And my friend Diana says, Elena being a doppelganger definitely influenced them, and that's the reason they were drawn to her.
Yeah, I think that as they got to know her, this is not Catherine. This is not close to being Catherine. She's so much different from Catherine, even though they're from the same lineage and they're, you know, a doppelganger looks exactly alike. You can't, even if you were to put them exactly together, you know, straight hair, no curly hair for Catherine and everything. I feel like if you're in the same room with the both of them, you could definitely tell who's who just by their demeanor and by how they act and their personalities, because they're just complete ends of the spectrum. They're complete opposite ends.
Yeah.
So BookTube Hubby says, I can appreciate Nina's acting in both roles, but it still comes through that they have some of the same personality traits, but they had so many outside influences that changed them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think, like, Damon knew Catherine, you know, back when she had more potential to be like Elena and to be a compassionate person. And I think he was just, I mean, it's, you know, story we've all heard before when you're just like in love with someone's potential more than like who they actually are right now in this moment. And I feel like that's what happened because he saw glimpses of that personality, but they were just like very fleeting fleeting glimpses. And yeah, I think he was going to hang on until she gave him the boot. And I think he had already started developing actual feelings for Elena for sure. And that just allowed him to actually like feel more for her.
Yeah.
So we're kind of winding down here a little bit. I want to ask the chat if anybody has any questions or anything very specific about the Vampire Diaries that they want to share. And while I wait for people to type something in the chat, I want to ask both of you, is there a minor character that you remember that stands out to you amongst minor characters? Like people that were, I guess, guest stars for a little bit that kind of disappeared because, you know, things happened to them. If you could remember any of them.
I always loved their aunt, Jenna.
Yeah.
I just liked her. And she was just so good.
I was thinking about Jeremy too. Like we didn't talk about him at all.
See, Jeremy annoyed the ever-loving hell out of me. He drove me crazy all the time. He was just such like a moody teenager, which makes sense. But he drove me nuts.
What's really funny about Jeremy is that he doesn't exist in the books.
Really?
In the original books, Jeremy does not exist. I think she had like a little sister named Maggie or something, and it was like a small kid, but they wanted a teenager that could, you know, cause trouble and be part of the drama, and so they made up Jeremy.
Oh yeah, Litsy.
Litsy was great. Oh, I loved Litsy. I was so angry with what Damon did to her. I loved Litsy. I was so angry. Yeah. But yeah, I agree. Litsy was a great character. I think like this isn't a character I necessarily liked, but Anna, I thought she was really annoying. I didn't like her, and I honestly didn't see the point to her character. So that's one character that I specifically remember, but all for the negative reasons.
So Vam's Rock says Rose in season 2.
Rose, yeah. The way she died was so beautiful, and I feel like honestly that scene, it really showcased Damon's compassion and his humanity, because he gave her so much hope, and he really let her, like the way she died it was very sad, but it was very peaceful for her. I feel like she was really at peace when she died because of how he comforted her and what he did.
Yeah. So Diana says, I just want to share that I'm rewatching now with my 15-year-old niece, and it's so fun watching her experience for the first time. She's Team Damon all the way.
Yes.
I love that. That has to be super exciting.
Yeah, that would be fun. I also like Caroline's mom. I mean, I didn't like her necessarily, but like, I don't know, I liked seeing her relationship with Caroline and how it changed and grew, and how she like was like, what the frick, you're a vampire now, and then like came to terms. You know what I mean? I just liked that journey that they went on.
Yeah, and I feel like the way she accepted Caroline, even though she grew up, I mean, she had this whole idea that vampires are bad and we need to kill them, and then she found her daughter is one, but then Caroline is able to show her, you know, yes, this has happened to me, but I'm still your daughter, and she's able to accept that, and she even goes out of her way to protect Caroline because obviously the rest of the town isn't okay with vampires. It was a really beautiful relationship that they had, and I'm really glad that the show made Caroline's mom be so understanding and eventually accept her daughter for what happened to her, because I don't know if we all remember what her dad did to her. But her mom was very accepting. It was really great.
So Vam's Rock says, yes, I really liked Liz and her hypocritical relationship with Damon.
Yes.
He was there. That was like, and then like that helped him process like some of his mom issues. Not having been at his own mom's funeral or whatever.
Yeah, Liz's death was heartbreaking. I can't.
That was a really rough episode.
Yeah, no fun.
Now that I'm thinking about it, there were multiple characters that kind of turned off their humanity. Who do you think turned off their humanity best? Like, who was the most interesting to watch while they were kind of running around without their humanity? Was it Stefan, or does Damon do it at one point? I can't remember 100% for sure, but I know that Stefan does, I know that Caroline does, and I know that Elena does.
I feel like Stefan, just because he caused the most damage, didn't he?
Damn it. Hey,
like, he just
the most death and carnage. Like,
yeah. Like,
he was just decapitating people.
Yeah.
I think Elena was the most annoying out of the three for me.
Yeah.
She wasn't, it's not that she created havoc. She just, I don't know. I felt like her actions, she was just acting like a petulant child when she had her humanity off. So I didn't really like that whole story arc of her turning her humanity off, because I just feel like it's not like she was acting emotionless. She was just acting like a child. So so I feel like her was my least favorite story arc.
I know Caroline, I'm pretty sure Caroline turned hers off when her mom passed away. That's where she was like, you knew that was going to break her.
I think
and like the fact that when she had turned off her humanity and she ripped up her mom's letter, right? And then when she regained it, she wanted to reread it, and she couldn't. She wanted to read it, she couldn't. And
I forgot about that.
And she asked Steph, was it right? She asked Stefan, what do you think she said? And it was so heartbreaking, because I'm sure her mom said beautiful things, and she would never be able to read her mom's last words.
Never. That's
yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah. Seriously. Oh, there was one minor character whose name I don't remember now. I feel like Lori, Janie. Who was the reporter? Do you guys remember the reporter that Damon was dating?
Oh, yes, I remember her. I don't remember her name either.
It was like, I feel like it was kind of like a unisex name, and now I can't remember what it was. But I felt like he really cared about her, even though he still did Damon things and was probably using her for a little while, like towards the end, when she was no longer around. I feel like that was pretty painful for him. Andy, there we go. That was her name.
Oh yeah.
I can remember it. Thank you, Vams Rock.
I feel like she was honestly only there to kind of like keep him from being lonely. So when she died, it was kind of like, oh no, I'm gonna be alone again. And I do feel like in some way he cared about her, but I feel like he mostly used her to stave off his loneliness. But that, I don't know, I could be wrong.
I mean, a lot of the people that he was with, he was kind of using, but I felt like you started to see glimpses of his humanity in their relationship. Like, that's where you first started to see that was possible from him, I kind of thought. But she wasn't around for very long at all.
No. Poor her. I feel bad. Like, how she died, I feel that was pretty traumatic.
Somebody we haven't really talked about at all is Alaric.
Yeah. He's cool.
Oh,
I like Alaric.
He's cool.
I like Alaric.
Yeah.
My favorite part about Alaric was his friendship with Damon. Like, they had such a beautiful romance. It was amazing. I loved it.
Really did. That like made me emotional quite a few times. Like, they're like them trying to like save each other, be there for each other, or like them like going in to save all the kids kind of thing. Like, they're like the older ones, and
And when like Alaric died, I remember this scene where Damon was, I think it was next to his tombstone or something. He was drinking and he was just like complaining about everything that was happening, and he was just gushing and just letting out his emotions. And in the back, like the ghost of Alaric was like, "I miss you too." And I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yes.
I was like, "I miss you too, brother." And I was like, "Oh,
so precious."
There was a time though. There was a moment where I feel like Damon did something that Alaric was super, super pissed off at, like something that he carried with him for a while that he didn't want to talk to Damon for. And Damon was like, come on, I'm doing Damon things. Like, how could you blame me? Like, do either of you remember?
That rings a bell, but I can't remember what the thing was either. I don't know.
No.
But the great thing about their friendship was that Alaric knows that.
Oh my God, Diana said Damon killed him. Was that it?
Yeah, I remember that.
He was mad?
I think so. Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, that's
I'd be pissed off too.
He died
I'd be so pissed off
times, huh?
Wow. Oh my God.
But
yeah.
One thing that I remember that I really loved about their friendship was that Alaric was very accepting of Damon. Damon's very reckless. He goes by his emotions. He kills people, he killed him. And Alaric still accepted him. He accepted him. He's Damon. He's crazy, but he's still my friend. And I'm going to accept him for who he is. And I think that's one of the things that I really liked about their friendships.
All right. Well, we're pretty much at the hour mark. I want to say thank you to Social Distance Book Fest for letting me talk about something I love for an hour. I want to thank both of you for joining me. I want to thank everyone in the chat that showed up and was just as enthusiastic about your experience with the Vampire Diaries. Do either of you have any final thoughts that you want to share in regards to your feelings about the Vampire Diaries, or something that you want people to be aware of, or anything like that?
No, I'll probably start watching it.
Rewatching it.
Yeah. I'm like, or watch my favorite moments on YouTube or something.
Maybe we should do a Netflix party thing. So we can chat while we're watching it. That might be fun. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This should be available for replay if you missed any of it. And I hope you all rewatch The Vampire Diaries. If you haven't already checked it out, definitely check it out. Check out Stefan's diaries. Those are really, really good if you're into that. And don't forget that you can do a Vampire Diaries tour and an originals tour. I don't know if they're still doing it with, the pandemic we're dealing with, but there was an annual convention where you can go and you can meet the cast and stuff like that. So I have had an opportunity to meet Bonnie and Lexi and Jeremy and Stefan and Damon and all of them. So that was pretty cool. And that is a thing that still happens, I believe. So anyway, thanks for joining us and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.